Hi, everybody, and welcome to TNMCoaching Unplugged and Zoran Todorovic Interconnected podcast. I'm so grateful and happy that you're with us one more week. We receive a lot of good feedback around this podcast, and I'm so happy that our community is growing, that you're loving what you're learning. As you know, this podcast is created for you to elevate your mind, to elevate your heart, to elevate your soul to the next level of beyond, to break through to the new learning and to remember what you already know. So today we're going to dive into the space of systemic culture by design. We're going to dive into the space of strategic approach to organizational health and value creation. And we have a wonderful guest, Patrik Somers, who is with us. Patrik is a systemic cultural transition consultant. He's also a facilitator, coach with over 30 years of experience. He was a faculty member of Barrett Values Centre for decades when he experienced in working with the values, vision, mission in the public sector, in a profit for purpose sector, non-profit sector, including companies at the country level. He has a vast global experience in coaching, mentoring, and training. And he has also coached, mentored, and trained numbers of Barrett consultants in multiple nationalities. And his passion and expertise is understanding the whole systemic alignment through values, when he's specializing in program creation, facilitation, and coaching. And I know this is going to be an extremely interesting conversation, especially for the people who are listening from the business, but also if you're not a business person, if you're a small business owner or somebody who just end up listening to this podcast for your own personal growth and development, I know this podcast is going to be something very nice and very special. So Patrik, once again, welcome to the program. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Zoran, for having me. And thank you for this introduction. I feel a bit overwhelmed by what you all expressed and explained. But good. Let's go into the...
I'm known for that. You know, I trump the trumpet, and people usually when they come to the podcast, that's, oh my God, is it really me? But it's really you. So my first question usually to the guests, how did you end up in this field? What happened in your own life for you to get into the coaching, get into the mentoring, get into the value creation? What was this passion inside of you that was driving you in this journey? So let's start with that.
Oh, wow. That's going back far. As a child, Zoran, I never felt at home in my family of origin. I didn't feel seen, heard, understood, and loved. And I know my parents loved me, but I didn't experience like that. And my father was always absent. And so from that experience, as a father and as a teacher at the beginning, I was almost obsessed by creating a home for my children, for my students, where they felt seen, heard, understood, and loved. And I did that by being present. And presence became my number one value. And this has become a way of being in my work, also as coaching, training, facilitating, is holding a space where people feel at home, where they feel seen, heard, understood, and loved. And that's the space of connection from where we build whatever needs to be built. I know from experience, and I know from the work with clients, that holding the space by being present is the first step in connecting with the people. And from there, we build the common ground and look at culture, look at leadership. So yeah, if you ask my life purpose, it is coming home moment by moment in the mindful life we are meant to live and walking each other home.
Wow.
And that's what I do with my connection with people. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's always good to know, because people are curious about people. When we introduce somebody like you who is mentor, guide, coach, they're always thinking, what is their hero's journey? How did they come about, to do what they do? And I love what you shared so far about, your background very quickly, about the absence of your father, about you valuing the presence and showing up in that way. So it's good to know that about you, right?
And that means that I feel blessed now being a grandfather, and looking in the eyes of my grandchildren, I can see the future. And I don't talk anymore about the world and our world. I talk about their world and their life and their future. And that's what inspires me now more than ever to do the work we do.
Mm-hmm. So now let's dive into this, that really it's your core specialty when it comes to the value creation and understanding the systemic change. And I would love to dive into this from a different lens. And my invitation for this exploration with you is, what did you witness in the organizational development in your corporate world so far when it comes to the values and when it comes to the culture that inspired you to begin doing it in a different way, to begin bringing something new that we haven't had before? So what was the starting point when you begin working with the organization? You said, aha, this is missing, and this is missing, and that's missing, and that's missing, and we need to improve this, and we need to empower that. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So culture is the energy in the workplace. Is the way people experience how it is to be at work. That's the culture. And that's reflected in the behaviors, in the quality of the relationships. And I see, and I go back to the first thing I said, holding a space where people feel at home and there's a connection with the people. Well, when you see that people struggle, feel upset, feel stressed, feel overwhelmed at work, there is a sense of disconnect. There is a sense of disconnect that makes them feel uncomfortable. It has an impact on their experience, on their engagement, on their performance, and on the performance of the company. And so how to find a way to make people feel better? How to give them that sense of feeling connected, feeling belonging, how to be part of the story of the company and contribute to the story of the company. That's what is very often missing. People talk about a toxic workplace environment. You see the numbers from Gallup, how low they are about employee engagement. So what does it take to engage the people? That's where we come with, we look at culture. And so for me, culture is a combination of values, talents, and purpose. And with the values, we measure the culture with Barrett analytics by mapping the values on levels of consciousness. A value is what they value most in life, what matters most. And what matters most for people is that they get their needs met, getting their needs met. And it's based on the hierarchy of needs of Maslow that Barrett created a tool, a model, 7 levels of consciousness, where you see that people, what they value most is mapped on the levels of consciousness. And some values are what we call positive values, have that energy of connection, and some are limiting value, and they have that sense of disconnect, that sense of separation. Connection relates to dysfunctional behavior. Disconnect, separation, more fear-based, and that gives dysfunctional behavior. That's what we see in companies.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No. I love that. That sense of connection and disconnection is so important, that we have these values intact and that people can understand themselves on the level of the value. And you mentioned that what creates culture, it's values, talent, and purpose. So the first element is values, right? So we're decoding values. What about talent and purpose?
Yeah. And there's more to say about values, but because we look at
Go ahead.
Look at it. But talent is the other one. And talent is, what are the talents and how can we measure the talent? And how can we people help to invest in their talent to make them their strength and the skills that they need to have? And there we look at talent density in teams, because we see there is a lot of to to bring underperformers up to an average level. But if you coach the highest performers in the critical situations in the company, there will be a much higher level of spending so much time on underperformance. A culture is not a family. A culture is as a team. You don't want to create a family. You want to you want to create a sport team where everybody is in their best place to perform at their best. And the quality of relationship is important, but it shouldn't be a decisive factor to make promotions, to agree to whatever. The performance is important. And so we are a business. We're not a family. I read yesterday for the squad of the UK for the European Championship, the football, that 2 really good players are not selected this time. But they accept, they were not as good as they could be. And you need, for a high-performing team, look at the people as athletes, as sportmen, and see who is at their best in the right place to contribute to optimal performance. That's what you need to look at. Yeah. So talent density is important. That's where we look at. Values are important for the behavior and the mindset, and we will come back to the mindset. Purpose is, why do we do what we do in an organization, and who benefits from it? Is it all about profit, performance or profit? Or is there a higher purpose? Is there a way to look at how does the world become a better place because of the business? And very often the business competitive spirit is about being the best in the world. And in Dubai, where I work as partner of Conscious Consulting, I see a lot about being the best and the highest and the biggest and so on. How can we shift the mindset that we look at being the best in the world and being the best for the world? And that's where higher purpose comes in. And how do we align strategy towards purpose? And how do we make culture a strategic priority that is almost helping the strategy to be executed? And I know Peter Drucker said, it's ago, and culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah, I know that.
Is culture can feed and can feed strategy. Culture can be the embedment for strategy to flow and to be executed and to make it operational. Culture has to be the holding space where it flows. And that's where we measure values, and that we see at how healthy is the organization, and with the diagnostic. And that's what not only businesses need, but is also to monitor the work you do, the progress you made, and that you see the healthier the company, the less entropy, as we call it, and a waste of time, energy, and money, which results because of dysfunctional behavior. The healthier the company, the higher the engagement, and the higher the performance and the profit of the company. So healthy culture is essential. But then the big secret, because a lot of leaders are very interested until this part of the story, but then what we learn and what we see is the culture of an organization is a reflection of the consciousness of the leadership.
Right.
Culture of an organization is a reflection of the consciousness of the leadership, either previous leaders whose energy is still in the system, or actual leaders who show up in a way that they are a role model for others to behave. And that's where we see that leadership development is essential for culture transformation. Because the leaders are here not only to commit the transformation in the company, but that includes a commitment to personal transformation. How can they show up as a role model for the transformation they want to see in their team and organization? And so cultural transformation is related to leadership development, and I call it inner leadership development, inner work, personal transformation, self-transformation. That's where it all starts, and the rest follows, as you know. And so inner for outer leadership is for me the key and the essence for inner for outer change, inner for outer growth, and inner for outer sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can keep on going. You have to interrupt me and ask your questions because
No,
and
that's
so then we
okay.
look at
I would like to just to finish that part. Go ahead.
and that's where we come to what's the mindset? What's the mindset that is most activated in leaders? And we all have the two mindsets. We have the survive mindset and the thrive mindset. We want to survive and we have to survive, and we want to thrive. The survive mindset is only looking at what are the threats here. It's about fear, anxiety, and being sure that nothing is threatening you to survive. It's narrow, focused, fast, protective, and problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas thrive mindset, more looking at opportunities, feeling passion and excitement, innovation and collaboration. And it's not either or, it's both and. You have to survive in order to be able to thrive. If you look in the world, unfortunately, a lot of people struggle to survive. And that's got to do with health, with having a place to live, having the financial minimum to survive. And that's something we need to look at. The social inequality is still too high. And a lot of people live in a mindset of emotional survival because they believe that they don't have enough to survive. They believe that they don't belong and are not loved and lovable enough. And they believe that they're not good enough. And this, Zoran, is the biggest club of humanity, the Not Enough Club. And I've been an executive member of this club for decades, doing so much because I believed that I didn't have enough to survive, that I was not good enough, that I didn't belong. And that creates such a dysfunctional behavior of leaders. That's, you see, I studied the phenomenon of leadership fatigue. And leadership fatigue means leaders are tired and people are tired of poor leadership.
Yeah.
Every crisis in the world, every crisis in an organization, in a community, in a country, in a region where there is a war, it's always a crisis of leadership and consciousness. Always. And working with the leaders has an exponential impact on the culture. And so the inner work for leaders is so important. They have to do the inner work and looking at what is it. If you believe that you don't have enough to survive as a company, you do everything is a threat. Everything is an existential threat, and you live from crisis to crisis. And the only thing you do is protective, problem solving, short-term focus, and being competitive to destroy the others so that you will survive. And so how to create that balance to be more moving from fear to trust. And that's the first step. From fear to trust, from unsafe to safe, from separation to connection, from dysfunctional to functional behavior. And for many years, I did believe with the Barrett tool that this was the scale from fear to trust. And then the magic happened when I was ready to do deeper inner work at the next level, evolutionary level. And we've been at the same time very into this evolutionary coaching. And I love how you describe it as there also connecting body, mind, heart, and soul and spirit. If you go to that deeper level, then you feel, oh, wow, there is a lot beyond trust. It's from fear to trust to love, which is not the most corporate language, and you don't start with it. It's moving from unsafe to safe to sacred. So that you go from dysfunctional to functional to optimal behavior. Get the sense from disconnect to connect to interconnected in a bigger picture where you're fully focused. But that's only for the people who are ready to go into that deeper inner sacred work. Does that make sense?
Are we now at the level in our consciousness, Patrik, for the leadership development and culture development that leaders are ready to go deeper or not?
Ready? That's the whole point. I feel that when you can create and hold a space where people feel safe enough, where people feel at home, then it is possible to help them to move to what I would call the soft edge. We all have soft edges and hard edges. And you can't force a hard edge because then it's very often touching traumas and traumatic experiences. But you can help people to touch soft edges of where they are in their process. And then you see what magic experience they have if they can move beyond the soft edge. And I know it happens. But it's only when they are ready for it and when the space is there to experience it. And the beauty of this transformation work is you can do it in one-to-one, but much more often it happens in relationship with others. It's not only going through an experience themselves, but also sharing their experience with others, listening to experiences from others, feeling so safe that you are vulnerable and that you can share it. And the reason why it touches me is because I can also only do this work because I also have to be aware of my inner space. The more I can expand my inner space, the more the space around me is growing. So in Greece, there is the temple of Apollo in Delphi, and there are 3 beautiful maxims, old wisdoms at the entrance. And I use them all 3 in my deeper inner work, which is healing work. And the first is, know thyself. Know thyself. Becoming reflective leaders and being aware. Know thyself means know your world inside, know your world around you. And know that these 2 have a mutual influence on each other. Your inner world has an impact on the world around you, and the world around you has an impact on you. And then the big secret is you can make choices. You can make choices, and when you shift something inside you, you will see that it has an impact on the world around you. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And we are not there to solve problems. We are there to help people to see with new eyes, to see new things, and to, have new perspectives on a problem that they didn't have before. Helping them to imagine new possibilities. The second Delphic maxim is nothing in excess. Nothing in excess is exactly what we look at. Survive mindset, thrive mindset. You need both, and they have to be both activated, but none of them in excess. I see a lot of businesses who are only in survive mindset and do everything to get most profit for themselves and for the shareholders. I see NGOs and charities who go very into the thrive mindset, but they forget to take care of themselves, and they also don't survive. You have to survive. Every value has the potential to be limiting when it goes out of balance. There's always between not enough and too much. And too much is always a compensation of an unmet need from not enough. I can give you an example. For instance, generosity is one of the values on the level 5 in the Barrett. And decades ago, I got the compliment to be very generous. When people asked a lot, I gave a lot. When people asked too much, I gave too much. And I didn't feel comfortable with it, but I did it anyway. And the reason why, my generosity was an obsession for me, and that went back to being liked and belonging and showing how good I was. And from these two needs, from the Not Enough Club, I did everything to be generous. But it didn't serve them and not even less myself. And now there is that balanced generosity with boundaries. Very genuine, but with boundaries. And it's with everything like that. The last maxim, the Apollo temple, is surety brings ruin. That's fascinating. Surety brings ruin. We want surety. We want certainty. We want stability. We need it. And the one word that we have heard more than in the past decade, in the last years, is unpredictable. Everything becomes unpredictable and everything changes so fast. And so the one thing that we don't have anymore is surety. And how do we find a place to be at ease with uncertainty? Being at ease with what is. When you are struggle to survive, there is no space to be at ease. And so working with people in a culture with a mindset where we can help them to see how can we shift from fear to trust, and how can we step by step improve the energy in the workplace, the experience in the workplace. And it happens team by team. A culture is a big word, and in big organizations with complex structure and with a lot of toxic energy, it's massive. And at the same time, it starts with the right people. First, right people are the executive team of leaders who have to be committed, fully committed and aligned to do this inner work. And we've had teams where the CEO and 2-3 other leaders were really fully on with it, but very often you see resistance in other leaders, the team. And if the resistance is too big, then either the team is not ready for it or the leader leaves the team. You can only bring people to the place where they are willing to go to look at themselves. And it's the holding space that is an invitation, but it's up to them to make the choice and to do it.
Mm-hmm. And so why are people willing, some people, let's say, willing to do this, and some people are not willing, in your opinion?
That's a really good question. Very often people need to have very often it is a health issue that helps them realize, wow, I can't keep on going as I'm doing. If you see how many people are burnout, are depressed, if they take it as a moment of reflection that might be a a shifting root perspective. The beautiful definition that I got from Gita Bellin is transformation is a shift in root perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I've had moments, and me myself, I've had pivotal moments where my health was helping me to see myself and my life and my world in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to tell that story, but doesn't go beyond the culture team. But yeah, I also needed a health crisis 15 years ago.
I think it's very, very important for people to know, a bit more about your story. I love it. Go ahead. If it is relevant, share.
It's relevant. So my story is that I wanted to create a home for my children, and that was my life dream. And at some point, the mother of my children chose another relationship. And that was for me the end of my life, the end of my feeling at home, the end of my dream with my family, creating a home. Completely stuck, not knowing what to do. And 2 years later, and I felt like I was in struggle to survive. I went to the ophthalmologist with my daughter who needed glasses for school, and I assumed that I needed a new prescription. And that's where the doctor examined my eyes, and he saw that I was becoming blind on one eye.
Wow.
And he was blind on one eye. I lost all my detail view, and he was shocked because he couldn't see anything from outside. He sent me to the hospital, MRI scan. A brain tumor was pushing against the optical nerve and took away the sight on one eye. Immediate surgery was scheduled, brain surgery and so on. And they had to reschedule it because of problems with the theater. And in these 10 days that there was suddenly a space between the diagnosis and the surgery, friends of mine brought me to a doctor in Brussels, in Belgium, and they said, you have to go and see him. And they literally waited in the waiting room when I was inside. The doctor in Brussels, he didn't know anything about my personal situation. He looked at blind on one eye and brain tumor. And he asked me, Zoran, what is happening in your life that you don't want to see? What's making you blind? And he said, what's the benefit for you to be blind? And that's for me, that was for me the shock that where my personal transformation journey started. And he said, there are 4 things you need to do. You need to see, to accept, to forgive, and to restore. And if you do that, he said, you will be healthy again and your tumor has no reason to be there anymore. See, accept, forgive, and restore or heal. Well, I think it's almost a mantra that has helped me to do my personal work. I never had surgery. I am very well healthier now than 15 years ago. I'm happy. And I see what I see. I accept, and I struggle with acceptance. I forgive when I see what it takes, and I heal and restore. And that has become a holding space for people to do their inner work.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love that. I love that you shared this, especially in the context of what we're talking about, the conscious leadership and culture transformation and leaders needing to step to become the bigger and brighter version of themselves. And through your life journey that you share with us when it comes to the healing crisis, and usually it's healing crisis. I coach and teach a lot of leaders and people with the organization who are pushing themselves too hard, who are working too hard, who are wanting to be loved, appreciating, people who are part of not enough club. That I love the definition that you introduced. But this one that kind of came now, see, accept, forgive, and restore. What is the most challenging thing? To see something, I think that is easy, because if you have somebody who's your mirror, who can help you be in inquiry and become aware, you can see, right? To accept what you see, challenge, right? To forgive.
That's challenging. Forgive. I think at that time, the forgiveness was a difficult one. So I started my career 40 years ago, 4 decades ago, as teacher of religious education. And yeah, I've been teaching about forgiveness, and suddenly, yeah, how do I forgive? I don't know if you can forgive and what that means for you to forgive. And there was nobody asking for forgiveness. And I know it was more about myself than about others. And somebody helped me by saying, and that's what I also share with others when we work in that field, is what if you look at forgiveness as letting go the hope of a better past.
Okay, that's an interesting definition. Letting go of the hope of the better past. Okay.
Yeah. And it is, in a way, accepting the past as it was and not allowing the past to limit your present and future. And if you are not in a place of forgiveness, then it is the past who is limiting your options for the future and limiting your present experience in the moment. But it's hard work. And the essence of forgiveness very often goes back to relationship with both parents of care givers that you've experienced as a child. Where we do personal values and core values, for instance, and I ask people, what are your 3 core values, your personal core values? And they're always very happy to share. And the moment that I ask individually in a coaching or in a group setting for everybody, how much of these core values are yours and how much are they either your father's or your mother's values? And realizing how much loyalty we have to our parents and even extreme loyalty into taking burdens from them on our shoulders. And very often forgiveness is also part of giving back to them what belongs to them and moving forwards with without the generational and transgenerational stuff and noise and heaviness that is in this. And that's healing work. And so going back to culture, culture transformation is in the first place for me not fixing problems. It is about healing dynamics. Healing dynamics, and they always go back to people and they always go back to leaders. And so what the doctor gave me 15 years ago is amazing. So see, accept, forgive, and restore is almost, it's the secret alchemy of culture transformation.
It is because when we see the culture, when we accept what it is, when we forgive ourselves and others, and we work with the restoration, then we can create a healthy culture, as you said, which is the expression of the consciousness of the collective. And I think that, people usually think that culture is just created in the fabric of interaction between other people. But I love the definition that you gave at the beginning, that this is an expression of the bigger consciousness of the organization, bigger consciousness of the leaders. And I always think about this, that the leadership sets that emotional tone. They set this culture, and people like to aspire to be similar to them. And in order for them to be the best possible version of themselves, they also need to see themselves, which you said, knowing themselves. They need to accept themselves. They need to forgive to themselves and then restore and become the best possible version. When, knowing yourself, nothing in excess, and being able to work with the unpredictability and insecurity of life, as you brought from the ancient Greece as well, which is absolutely wonderful. So we're kind of getting into the, towards the end of this podcast. And, you were such a beautiful and amazing teacher and soul giver, sharer, that you and I can stay here for hours. We can record podcasts for 10 days. And hopefully one day we're going to create a series of these different podcasts. So based on what you shared so far, for people who are listening to this podcast, who are leaders or people who are HR executives, people who are working with the human development, what would you say it's your advice for them to move forward in creating the culture they really want to see? What would be something that you would love to leave the audience with? What would be your nugget of wisdom now based on this conversation? And we went place is here is what I would like to invite you to explore, to do, to become. What would you say on that?
70 years ago, there was a book published by Paul Tillich, and it is called The Courage to Be. What I wish every leader is the courage to be, and that they don't get lost in doing, but that they look at their way of being, who they are, who they really are, who they choose to be, and that what they do becomes a manifestation of their being. And you see the tree behind me. I don't like the iceberg with below the waterline. And so the iceberg is not a metaphor for a living system. The tree is. And when we look at the being, we look at the invisible bottom bit of the tree, the root work. And I love the transformation as a shifting root perspective. It's the root work that we do. A healthy tree grows in two directions, upwards and downwards. And it's individual and collective. And so the one advice is, have the courage to be. And have the courage to be means have the courage to look at your roots and to sense and to listen to your body and to your feelings, rather than only working from your head. And from who you are is then the next step, what you say and what you do and how you interact with others. But doing the inner work is essential for the outer world. Inner for outer leadership. That's what I want to say to leaders.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this podcast with Patrik, who is, as I said, the wisdom holder, wisdom keeper. I've learned so much. I mean, if you want to listen to this again and again and again, there's so many pearls of wisdom in this conversation. So thank you so much, Patrik, for coming to this podcast. Thank you so much for your energy and for who you are and what you represent in this world. Thank you. For everybody else who is listening, thank you so much for tuning to TNM Unplugged, the Zoran Todorovic Interconnected podcast. We're so grateful for you to invest your time and energy to listen to us week after week. Thank you so much, especially for our listeners on Spotify. We're growing there, so keep on listening while you're driving, while commuting. We know there is a lot of podcasts out there with beautiful content, so we're just grateful for our community and for you being with us today. Once again, thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Happy listening. Bye for now.